If you've ever been to Lake Crescent in Washington State, you know how quiet it gets at night. Too quiet. Last summer, me and 3 friends, Chris, Maddie, and Tyler, went there for one last camping trip before college. We thought it would just be bonfires, swimming, and beer, but something in that lake came back with us, and I'm starting to think it's not going to stop. We got to the Fairholme campground just before sunset. Highway 101 had been empty for miles. No gas stations, no lights, just forest and the occasional glimpse of the lake through the trees. When we parked, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No insects, no birds, just the faint sound of water lapping against the shore. The air smelled damp and earthy, like the lake had been sealed in a jar for decades and someone had just cracked the lid. Maddie stood at the shore and said, "It's too still. Looks like it's waiting for something." On the trail to our site, Tyler spotted an old wooden sign nailed crooked to a cedar tree. The paint was flaking, but the words were still legible. No swimming, after dark local advisory. Below that, in smaller faded letters, ask about the lady of the lake. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but later I learned it's a real legend here. A woman found at the bottom of the lake decades ago, her skin perfectly preserved by the cold water. Chris took a photo of the sign, laughing. I stood behind him and looked at the screen. The reflection of the lake in the photo had a pale blur in it, like a face, just under the surface, watching us. We set up camp, made a fire, and tried to shake off the creepiness. The sun dropped behind the mountains, and with it went the last of the light. The lake behind us turned into a black, endless mirror. Around 10 p.m., while roasting marshmallows, Maddie froze mid-sentence. "How many of us are here?" she asked. Tyler said, 4. Why? Because when Chris stood up just now, I saw 5 shadows move. We all looked around, but there was nothing, just the tree line. That's when I realized I hadn't heard a single branch snap or leaf rustle since we got here. The woods weren't just quiet, they were listening. Later that night, I woke to a sound: slap, slap, slap. Wet, heavy footsteps. Something brushed against the side of my tent, slow, deliberate, like fingers trailing over the fabric. I held my breath and listened. The smell hit me next algae and rot. I unzipped the flap a few inches. The campfire was out. The lake was still, and in the dirt were footprints. Bare, dripping, large. They led from the water directly to my tent and stopped there. In the morning, no one admitted to hearing anything, but Maddie looked pale and tired. She said she'd had a dream about being underwater, but when she woke up, her hair was wet. We spent the day hiking around the shore. The lake was beautiful in the sunlight, but every time I looked at it too long, my stomach turned. Once, I thought I saw something huge move deep under the surface, like a shadow shifting. Chris kept tossing rocks into the water, like he was trying to get a reaction. When I told him to stop, he just smiled and said, "I think it likes me." That night, we decided to stay up. Around 2 a.m., the splashing started again, slow, rhythmic, like someone walking through the shallows. Chris stood up without a word and started toward the sound. His arms hung unnaturally loose at his sides, his head tilted too far to one side. Tyler grabbed him, and Chris turned to face us. He smiled, but it wasn't his smile. His lips stretched too wide, his teeth looked sharp, and his eyes reflected the firelight like an animal's. We shoved him into the car and locked the doors. "All night," he whispered, not in English. The sound was wet, like words bubbling through water. By morning, Chris was fine, but his shirt was damp, and his bare feet had small cuts like from sharp stones on the lake bed. We packed up and left without talking. On Highway 101, just before Port Angeles, Maddie whispered, "Don't look back." I did. Through the trees, the lake was still visible. A figure stood waist deep in the water. It looked exactly like Chris, but Chris was asleep in the backseat. It's been a year. Maddie moved to Spokane. Tyler vanished after a late-night drive. Chris isn't the same person anymore. Last night, I woke to dripping in my bedroom. A wet trail led from my window to the foot of my bed, and in the dark, I heard a slow, wet breathing. Just now, my phone buzzed. No name, no number, just a photo. It's from that night at Lake Crescent. The four of us are around the fire. Behind me, in the shadows, there's a tall figure, dripping wet, with its hand on my shoulder. I think it's in my house right now. If I don't post again, you'll know why. Part 2 if I'm still alive to tell it. If you want to hear the rest, and trust me, you will subscribe, hit the bell, and stay close. Because whatever this thing is not finished.